What's up, Weirdo Swarm? You are listening to Podagon Infinity, the podcast that opens the door to all things King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. My name is Joe.
And my name is Spencer. Joe, we're back to what was once our norm. We're recording remotely from one another, but it's not without good reason. Maybe a little more on that as our conversation unfolds a little bit further. But Joe, we have not one, but two very special guests coming on the show with us today.
Yeah, we do. We've been talking for a while about wanting to have more guests on the show. It's really fun to get other people's perspectives on things when it comes to the music of Giz or whatever the topic may be. We did one interview once, and you were actually not there for that one. You were busy with something on a trip or something maybe, but late last year, around the end of the summer, maybe something like that. It was not long after Field of Vision, because that was the subject of that interview, and I spoke to our friend Ben Bacon, who's a Giz super fan, traveled all over the country and the world last year, following the band all over the place on their various tours across the globe, and that was a lot of fun. So since then, we've been trying to find other people that would be great to chat with on the show here, and you told me maybe a few months back, or I don't even know how long it's been now, but you told me about this other Giz-related podcast that was out there, and for the longest time I didn't listen to it. He kind of mentioned it, and I was like, that's cool. I love the idea of it, and finally recently actually listened to their show a bit because that would be wrong of me to have never heard it and then be like, hey, let's go on the podcast. I have no idea what you people do. So anyway, the two guests are the hosts of Midnights with the Lizard Wizard. Noëlle and Yael from that podcast are here with us today. And I guess before you introduce yourselves in more detail, I'll just try to give a brief little synopsis on what it is you do on your show, because it is really unique and really fun. So on Midnights with the Lizard Wizard, Noëlle and Yael have never heard King Gizzard before starting their show, and I have a lot of questions about how you got to the point of doing this shit. I'm so excited to learn about it, but the two of you knew about the band somehow, were introduced to them in some way, but you had never heard their music, and so you decided to start a podcast where you go through the band's entire discography in chronological order and do a reaction podcast episode about each release. And you've also, on top of just the studio albums, they've done some live chat as well, I believe, about some live shows, the bootlegs, all the extra weird releases and stuff. So yeah, really fun show, really fun concept, and I'm super excited to get into it and hear how it's been going for them and how they got to this point to begin with. So welcome to Podagon Infinity, Noëlle and Yael Midnight.
Thank you so much for having us. Yeah, so I'm Yael, and
I'm Noëlle,
and we are the Midnights. That is our last name. If you're wondering why the show is called Midnights with the Lizard Wizard, we are the Midnights, and we're talking about the Lizard Wizard. And yeah, you're exactly right. We did not know this music. We had heard the name King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard thrown around for years independently of one another. It's not a band that we ever talked about getting into. It's not a band that, like, our friends were begging us, oh, you need to listen to this album. People liked it. But one day,
so
yeah. Do you want to start with this?
Yeah. So my thought process on this was that I had seen bits and pieces of their live sets through like Coachella live streams or whatever, or like when Nugs was streaming all of 23. Or was it 24? I don't remember. I saw some of their clips on YouTube, and I would click in and watch for like 3 minutes and go, oh, this is boring. I don't really like this. And so I'd turn it off. And I just kept hearing throughout the years from everyone that I know. And I work in audio, and I write for Swim Into the Sound, which is an independent music journalism outlet. And everyone I know is just like, oh, you've got to check out King Gizzard. They're a great band. And I kept hearing about how diverse they are and how they do different things on each record. And I always thought that was a really fun idea. And so knowing that they were a really diverse band, I thought, well, what if we took this from the very beginning?
Yeah, so I think that the way it got into my head was, we have a friend who was actually our first guest on our show, on our episode about I'm in Your Mind Fuzz. And Liz, this friend, really was unwilling to watch a movie that the rest of us, all of our friends, really wanted her to watch. The movie I Saw the TV Glow, a phenomenal trans psychological horror movie that really one of my favorite films of all time. And because everybody was talking about it, she just bristled against the idea of ever watching it. And so trying to get her to watch this movie, I said, okay, Liz, anything that you want me to do, I will trade you. You watch this movie and I'll do whatever you want. You can make me listen to an entire band's discography if you want. Okay. And so she joked, okay, listen to all of King Giz. But she never actually said to do that. A deal was never made. She never agreed to watch the movie. And so that was in the back of my head for a while. And eventually we did get her to agree to watch the movie in exchange for watching a single episode of the show House Hunters, which I honestly think I got a pretty good end of the... I didn't have to do all that much to get her to watch this movie in the end. But that idea of, okay, this entire band discography was floating around in there. And Noelle and I were chatting about it last summer. And at one point, we were flying out to DC, to the other Washington, and I was sitting around in the airport. We had a long time before the flight, and I just sort of started putting together a spreadsheet of all of the albums because we constantly throw ideas back and forth with one another, and none of them ever actually happen. We never actually do the thing. But hey, we're not going to do the thing if we don't ever get started, so I started putting together a spreadsheet in the airport.
And you did the thing.
We did the thing.
Yes.
I think it's worth noting that for all functional reasons, I end up being the host of Midnights with the Lizard Wizard, and I edit it, and I'm the technical behind it. But also, for practical reasons, Yael is the one who makes the show work. Yael is the one who makes the show happen. She's made all the spreadsheets. She's done all the research. She's the one who comes in and rants for 20 minutes about a topic that I didn't even know we were going to dive into. If you've seen our show and seen, there are 2.5 hour long episodes, that's Yael's fault.
It is my fault.
Yeah.
I'm a professor. I teach for a living. I'm so comfortable just getting up there and talking at people for a while. And I absolutely feel myself slipping into a lecturer mode when I'm on the show. So I'm sorry, I think is the response I need to give.
So basically, you're telling me that this episode here is going to go on a little longer than I probably anticipated.
It's very
I sure
possible.
hope not. For your sake.
There's no way we know anything about that, Joe, right?
Which one of you edits, Joe? You edit?
Me, Joe. I'm the editor, yeah.
Okay, then Joe, you're the one I'm sorry to.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, Spenser never apologizes when he talks too much on our show.
Nor should
I did the
you.
one time.
But no, that's something we're completely familiar with because every single episode we record, like recently we did a couple of their earlier albums, discussions for a couple of their earlier albums, like Willoughby's Beach and 12 Bar Brews.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, these albums have like 10 songs or whatever, but they're all so short and so basic. Like, we'll get through them quick. And then like 3 hours later of recording, I like can't talk anymore. My throat hurts. I'm like, Jesus Christ, what just happened? What have we done? And then I gotta, go through all that.
Our shows have definitely ballooned in length over time as we've gotten more into the band, and especially as like I've gotten really into the music theory of like Flying Microtonal Banana and explaining the music theory side of that, or talking about the storylines in Murder of the Universe or in Polygon Dwanaland. So there's always a lot to say, but it did not start out this way. I think Noelle's first reaction after our very first recording when we did Anglesey, maybe even before we recorded, just after the first couple of listens, was, did I make a mistake getting into this band?
And I definitely did.
Yeah, we did not have much to say early on.
I definitely made a mistake, but it's not the mistake I thought I was making at that point in time.
No, the mistake at this point is fully budgetary.
Yeah,
That's a fair point. I think to give the listeners a picture of where you are in the discography, because you're going from start to finish. You're going chronologically. What album are you at now?
We are about to record Gumboot Soup in a day or two.
Mm.
So we are finishing up their 2017 set of 5 albums.
Which means that now we can actually watch a lot more live stuff. Now that we've got Polygon Land and Gumboot Soup behind us, we can actually watch some live sets that we haven't been able to see before, because they love throwing Muddy Water right into the middle of sets that otherwise we could have watched.
They do. Yeah.
Yes.
So-
Especially on the last tour.
Yeah, and you also have, there's some great live stuff from that era, because obviously there was just so much music. They were super busy, super active in that year and around that time period in general. And 2017 is when they did their first KEXP performance, so you'll get to check that out
That
as well.
is not true.
No, wait, was there?
That is not true.
Was there one before that I'm missing?
Yeah,
was that
they-
their second one? Oh boy!
Oh, yeah.
Oh no, fake fan.
Fake fan
called
alert.
out.
Boop, boop.
I think at this point, we've heard 3-4 KEXPs from them.
Because there was Flying Microtonal Banana, there was Murder of the Universe, there's Polygon Land, Gumboot Soup.
And they've definitely played The River in KEXP. So did they do one for Quarters?
I don't remember.
That's a good question.
I don't remember off the top of my head. I thought that they did one in. I thought they only did it twice. I thought there was a 2017 and then like a 22 or whenever that next one was.
No, they've done KEXP, I think, 6 times.
Which is frankly absurd.
Yep.
Damn, really?
Love KEXP.
I need to go dig back and check out the early ones I might have missed.
Yeah, you should. Their Flying Microtonal Banana KEXP set is killer. It's so good.
It's definitely my favorite KEXP set I've ever seen.
That's probably the one I see people sharing the most, like songs and clips and highlights from on social media for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely the one that I saw then. If they did multiple that year, or at least separate ones with music from different albums of 2017, then I definitely haven't seen them all, but I have certainly seen the Banana one. I feel like I could picture them playing Rattlesnake and a couple other tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Noëlle and I are local to Seattle, so we can go down to the KEXP every now and then, to the coffee shop they have there. It is wild to see that this band was playing, selections from Murder of the Universe in this cafe space, and how that will never happen again. Clearly, they're way too big for that by now, and we do feel. At least I do. Like, I missed out a little bit on some of what earlier fans would have gotten.
I mean, I feel like I'm missing out on stuff every day.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
like I'm missing out on the current hype cycle over the next couple of albums that people are expecting, because I know that even when those albums come out and everybody flocks to listen, and Polygon will have an episode of an immediate reaction to those albums, we're not going to be able to hear them for like a year.
Right.
And that's our short timeline.
So I had a question about that, because I haven't listened to all your episodes. I'm not completely up to date on everything. The other day I was listening to a little bit of your recent Polygon Land episode, which I didn't get to finish yet, but I was listening to that, and I did also check out some of the earlier stuff, including your first episode on Anglesey. And I remember just in kind of your general setup, it might have been Noëlle doing like the kind of main sort of setup of the whole show and stuff at the beginning.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that timeline of thinking that it's going to be about 5 years to get through everything. So I actually I had a question about that. I just wanted to ask, like, I guess sort of how you came up with that figure, and how much stuff outside of just their studio albums do you plan on discussing? And, just sort of like walk me through that timeline a little bit.
That has changed as we have gone on. Our initial plan was to do literally everything. And I'm talking about everything. Every studio album, every live album, every KEXP set, everything. Mm-hmm. But we realized pretty quickly that we are really excited for the studio records, and we want to be able to catch up at some point. So I think we have to skip a bunch of the live stuff, especially once we get to the point where they're recording every show on tour.
Yeah, so I put together that very first spreadsheet, the very first version, and it had us going through 2030, or towards the beginning of 2030 is when we would finally get to Phantom Island and some of the more recent of like the European rave tour, Mango Sticky Rice, all that jazz. And I I pretty quickly was like, no, I really want to hear this. I really want to hear all this new stuff. I don't like waiting. I'm a very impatient person. And
So true, bestie.
what was worse than the patience was that in this schedule, we had over a year's worth real time of shows for our podcast that were going to just be this like One Night Everywhere 2024 official bootlegs. And at some point we just sort of had to realize that that's not going to make good radio. That as much as, you know, some of these shows are probably incredible and have a lot to talk about, I don't know how we're going to talk about that many shows and have something new to say when as much as they're doing their jams and they're changing their sets up, the core material isn't going to be changing every 2 weeks for a full year and in a way that'll let us keep an audience.
So that's a similar struggle to what we've had a couple of times, Joe and I. You know, we do want to, like, we have a couple of times touched on the live show aspect, and, you know, we've kind of done like a tour summative or like reflections on the couple of shows that we've been to. And I think you really hit the nail on the head there. It's like, you know, if you were to make the choice to cover every single live show, like what sort of minute differences would there be in the way that you cover, you know, night after night? Oh, live in Asheville. Oh, the next night in Richmond, the next night in Philly, whatever. You know, so I think as podcasters, that's kind of a challenge, you know, for a band whose reputation and whose notoriety centers so much on the live show experience. Like how do you cover that? It's kind of an ongoing battle struggle.
Right, because it's so clearly an important part of what the band is. So we covered we've covered a couple of live albums of the official bootlegs. We lumped together some with a studio album where early on, especially when most of their shows were pulling mostly from one or two albums. And I think that later on we probably will include some of the official bootlegs. We might do something like one show about,
I mean, we got to do Red Rocks.
You know, we might do like one marathon show about Red Rocks or something like that. One show about their rave stuff. One show about their orchestral live shows. But we're just probably not going to do every show. And we just kind of quietly dropped that. But if you go back, yeah, like you said, and listen to our earlier shows, we're talking about the 2030 timeline. The current spreadsheet has us catching up in March 2027, but it'll probably be later than that. It'll almost certainly be later than that.
But there'll be 10 more albums by then, so...
There'll be, they're due for another 5-album cycle in 2027 if the trend keeps going.
God willing, yeah.
Yeah, that's something, you know, you got me thinking about our situation with our show here. Like Spenser was kind of saying, we've done sort of post-concert wrap-up episodes and reflections on their the times that we've seen them on a couple shows, the last 2 North American tours. But other than that, we haven't dove super deep into their live show stuff, and that's something that I think we're going to have to do because we have covered almost all of their albums on our podcast so far. Yeah. And especially because of the fact that when we first started our show, we were doing it on a weekly basis and just like chewing through a bunch of them pretty quickly. And after a few months...
That's insane. Weekly. That's...
Yeah. Well, after a few months, I started to feel a little burnt out, especially just with editing, because it takes me hours of like sitting there just cleaning everything up and cutting out all the little, you know, moments where we pause to like think or gather our thoughts or anything like that. Like there's all this stuff I have to do, and it's not hard. It just takes time after we've talked for about 2 hours or so, which is like our average. So what I was getting to, I almost forgot where I was going with this. What I was getting to is that, we quickly, after a few months of doing the show, I was like feeling a little burnt out and decided, let's do this as a bi-weekly thing, space it out, give me time to not rush through the edits. And also it, you know, just kind of drags out the material a little longer, so we don't go through all their music and then just be like, all right, I guess we're done doing the show now. You know, we have a lot of fun doing this, and we want to keep it going as long as we can. So after we cover the last couple of their albums that we haven't talked about yet, that's sort of our plan, is talk more about live stuff, get into some of the bootlegs and some of the other things that we haven't covered yet. And actually Anglesey is one of the things that we haven't talked about yet. We did Willoughby's and sort of presented that as like, well, this was their like a first like official kind of release out there. It's the first thing you see on any streaming platform or anything like that in their discography. But yeah, there was released music when they were just a tiny little local indie band where, you know, selling CDs with a few songs on it and stuff. So like that's something we'll have to go back and do. And so
for sure,
yeah, I'm excited to dig deeper into all that.
Yeah, it's a fun one in retrospect, partially because, you know, in his release notes for each thing they put out, Stu says for Teenage Gizzard for Anglesey, hey, don't listen to this. Like, it's not good. Why are you listening to this? Please don't.
We also started doing our show on a bi-weekly basis, except we started doing that from the start. And part of my reasoning behind that was, A, I'm already doing another podcast and editing is murder.
Yeah.
But also, I wanted to make sure I had enough time to listen to the music and internalize the music while also having time to listen to the music that I already know and love. And I knew that I was short on time just for the stuff that I'm already trying to listen to. And so adding in Giz on top of that felt like a really big ask. So I was like, okay, I think we can do this. We just have to listen to each record 3 times. Once for lyrics, once for instrumentals, and once for an overall view.
Yeah, that did not stay that way. And part of it is that, you know, we're coming to each of these albums with completely fresh ears. We'd never heard any of these albums before the 2-week cycle. And, you know, so Fishing for Fishies is going to be our next show after we record for Gumboot Soup in a day or two, and I have not heard a moment of Fishing for Fishies. So
I'm excited for you.
I have to get familiar with the music, and then I have to get deep into the music, right?
Yeah.
I need to get it in my head a little bit and start humming the tunes around the apartment. And then I have to really dive in. What are they saying? What are they trying to do with this record, and how are they putting it together? And to do all of that in 2 weeks and then to edit it.
It's a big ask.
Yeah.
Right. It's a lot. And so if anything, you know, like the idea of doing it weekly is just mind-bogglingly like Sisyphean effort to me.
And another thing that we're looking for as we're recording each episode is how are they growing? How are they evolving? How are they taking the skills that they've learned in previous episodes and previous albums and throwing that forward into what we're hearing now? So like, I mean, if you listen to the Polygon Wonderland episode, we talk about how even in tracks 2 and 3 on there, we hear glimpses of Paper Mache Dream Balloon, and we hear elements from like Flying Microtonal Banana and even Nonagon, where we're doing the robotic vocals and the big, like, chaotic, noisy garage rock sections that are so indicative of Nonagon. And so we're looking at each album as, how does this grow from what we've heard before? Because I think we're in a unique vantage point to be able to do that, where because we're going chronologically, we see that growth in a linear fashion. No, yeah, it's been fascinating to see. I mean, nobody really gets to see a band in that way. Nobody, unless you're following along with them from the beginning, gets to look at each new record and go, okay, I understand how this fits into the chronology now because I see what this has evolved from. And I think that's super fascinating. And that's something I'm really looking forward to as we dive into live stuff too, because I know that a lot has evolved from Nathan on their live sets. And that Nathan is now becoming what's going to be, you know, presumably the future techno record.
Yeah, they created a monster.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how we can follow that growth and progress, not just through the studio records, but through live stuff as well, and how we can fold that into the show and talk about that in an interesting way.
Yeah, and speaking about the growth and progress of the band as you've been listening chronologically, that was one thing, first of all, that kind of lured me into listening to your show in the first place was, okay, this is a really unique kind of perspective. It's not, you know, these aren't people who have heard a whole bunch of like smattered singles of the band or whatever. They're going in pretty fresh, and they're going in order. And so with that in mind, I'm really curious, is there anything along the way that you've discovered in the musical stylings and the genres they've touched on, the instrumentation, or even lyrical themes? Is there anything that has really stood out for you as a surprise? Like, oh, I didn't know they were all about this, or I didn't know I would ever hear this from them.
So I'll start with that one. And I'd say my biggest surprise is that I like all of it. I'll be honest, if I had watched the Flying Microtonal Banana KEXP out of context without already knowing the band, I probably would have written it off as some indie bullshit that isn't for me. But being able to travel along with the band, I started with stuff that wasn't for me, which was like Anglesey and 12 Bar, which not really my vibe, not my jam. I don't do that like garagey, like spring reverby, like really dirty shit. But then as they evolved, I kept listening to each record, 7 to 10 times. And I've noticed that as I listen that many times, I kind of get Stockholm syndromed in to really, really digging what I'm hearing on almost every front. And so I think the biggest surprise for me so far has just been, oh, I can like a lot more things than I thought I could like.
Okay.
I think that for me, I think that hearing a through line in their music has been fascinating. Hearing things in a bunch of different genres, but all still at their core, they sound like Giz. It's been really odd. And so what would you say is like the core, like the je ne sais quoi, what needs to be there for it to be a Giz song? And at this point, again, we've got almost a decade's worth of Giz music upcoming that we have not heard yet. So this could all change.
Buckle up.
And I'm so excited. I'm so fucking pumped. But what makes a Giz song sound like a Giz song, no matter what genre it's in? You're going to have a pretty heavy emphasis on things like doubling the vocal with an instrument, right? There's very, very few songs or very few albums that don't have a pretty heavy amount of this vocal doubling with either the bass or one of the guitars or something.
Sure.
There's just always a big sound that's coming through because so many of the parts that are being played are layered on top of each other. And Stu doing his own mixing for so much of it, I think also lends a sound that is consistent to an extent across the discography. Like Noëlle said, some of it is just, I like all of it. So something that we've talked about on the show is that I am not a metal person. I really often struggle with metal. And while we haven't gotten to Infest the Rat's Nest or Petrodragonic Apocalypse yet, I'm at this point really looking forward to them. And I didn't expect to be.
Giz has a way of doing that too.
Yeah, Digital Black off of Murder was awesome. It was so good.
Yeah, I was gonna say Digital Black might be the heaviest song you've heard so far. Would you say?
It's either that or Great Chain of Being.
Right. And
that's true.
Those are now two of my favorite songs of theirs from those two albums. And just, I'm so pumped now to get to Rat's Nest. When we started this show, Rat's Nest and Petro were two of the albums that I was kind of most hesitant about, most scared of. And I think that the same kind of thing happened with Noëlle with the microtonal stuff, which I was super pumped about from the get-go. And Noëlle was very, very hesitant about. But after Flying Microtonal Banana, Noëlle can't stop talking about how excited he is for KG and for LW.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it is such a cool thing because I've always kind of, for me, I did grow up listening to a lot of heavy music. I kind of had my dad's influence with a lot of hard rock and classic heavy metal and thrashy stuff. Like Metallica was always like my favorite band as a kid. And so I have always kind of been into that sort of stuff, but I've always had a pretty a broad taste in music. And so that's why Giz just fits so naturally into the music that I love, because they just do so many different things really well that just keep me excited, especially when they're working on something new. Like, I'm just so excited for whatever they're going to do next. No matter what genre it is, I'm probably going to like it because I just like the way they do things. And so would you say, I think what kind of Yael, what you were saying or getting at is that it seems like they've kind of opened you up and opened your mind and your ears to a lot of different they opened the door for you to some different music that maybe you wouldn't have ever gotten into otherwise. So that's really, really nice to hear.
Yeah, that's absolutely how I see it. And you know, when initially we were thinking, okay, we can listen to this three times, each album 3 times, and then record. You know, we're listening to this each album now a dozen times, and so I think Noelle put it best with the idea of Stockholm syndrome, is that I can't listen to any other music now and listen to an album once or even twice and give an opinion on it. Because I've seen now with Giz that there have been plenty of albums that I'm not sure whether I'm really into this one 3 listens in, but by the time we get to record 2 weeks later, no, I love this shit.
Well, yeah, it took me a week and a half with Paper Mache Dream Balloon before I finally clicked in and went, oh, I get this now. But it took me a solid week and a half where I was going, oh, I'm not going to be able to make good radio about this because I don't like any of these songs. Mm-hmm. And now I would solidly consider that in my top 3 Giz records, period.
Wow.
Like, it's such a strong record that I would have bounced off of so hard if we weren't doing this in this format.
Yeah, I without giving away any spoilers, we both hold that in high esteem too. Paper Mache.
Yeah. That's one of the early ones for me. I know you mentioned a little bit ago that you've been listening to Gumboot recently. You said that's going to be your next episode, and then we're going into Fishing for Fishies after that. And no spoilers about that album or anything. I don't know how much you know about it, but just to sort of give you me and Spenser's background,
I know,
with
Boogie Woogie Oogie.
Yeah, okay, but that's all you need to know. So just to give you a little background with me and Spenser getting into the band, that was the album that got us into them, and I had heard a little bit of their music before listening to that record. Funny enough, actually, I've mentioned this on the show once or twice before, but the first ever song that I ever heard by them, because for whatever reason, it was like an inside joke in my friend group, was Vomit Coffin.
Incredible.
Just Vomit Coffin with zero context. Didn't hear all of Murder of the Universe till like a couple years later. I have one friend who's sort of the one, he's the guy that really got me into the band. He's a huge fan of them. We've seen them live together a few times, and I had heard Infest the Rat's Nest as well at one point from another friend, and I thought it was cool because I was into, some heavy stuff like that. But then one day he just told me to listen to Fishing for Fishies, and I have vivid memories of like listening to it at work on that fateful day, and it was all just into the rabbit hole from there. And so I'm excited to hear your perspective on it as an album that means so much to me and to Spenser as well, because I pulled him in to them with that album because I figured that'd be his style. So I'm excited to see you hit on that one.
So without giving any spoilers, but in a word, what's the genre of Fishing for Fishies?
Blues rock, classic rock, folky rock at times.
Okay. In that case, I'm very excited. I think that sounds great.
Yeah, but it does, I will say there is one point in the album where it takes a little bit of a turn in a couple tracks, and I'm not going to say anything else about that.
Well, that's what I love to hear. That's it takes a turn is, I think, the best thing that somebody could tell you about a Giz record you haven't heard yet. That excites me like nothing else.
I'm so stoked.
Yeah, and again, there's some kinds of music that I haven't always vibed with in my life. Electronic music and techno is definitely one of those genres for me. And with all of these, I love synths, but techno and like rave music, dance music like that has just never been for me. And with the idea that they might have this techno record coming out. Well, okay, I listened to some of Joey's work with Bullant, and it's not really for me. And yet, I'm still not afraid of the album that's going to come out because they're gonna giz it up, undoubtedly. There's going to be something in there that they're going to find a way to pull me in because they always do.
Yeah, I'm convinced that record will still have most of what I like.
Oh my God.
Nice.
No pun intended, right?
Very nice. That's the kind of stuff Spenser does on this show all the time. That's usually his job, is the puns and little callbacks to songs, squeezing song names into sentences as much as possible. So that
of
felt
course,
right at home.
just kind of falling down that trapdoor.
I'm the resident.
Oh my God. Oh no.
I'm the resident old man of our podcast, and so I'm always dropping the bad like dad jokes and stupid puns and saying
Someone
something
has
about
to
kids
have that
these
role.
days.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about Midnights with the Lizard Wizard that we're trying to do. And I think that because of that whole, like, I slip into professor voice and then just lecture for an hour and a half, I might not get there as much as we want to. But, like, if you go on Apple Podcasts, we're listed as comedy.
Yeah. Like we do try to be funny. I don't know that we always like hit that mark, but we do try to be funny on our show because there's got to be something engaging, right?
Yeah, we do the same thing. We try to be, entertaining and fun to listen to above anything else, and get into deep, serious music analysis mode when we need to.
Right.
Yeah, and one of the things that I modeled the show after when I was initially like talking about the concept, what I had in the back of my head and what I tried to communicate to Yael was the show Gilmore Guys, which was Kevin T. Porter and Demi Adejuyigbe going through the entire run of Gilmore Girls from start to finish, one of them having never seen it before. And that show really informed how I wanted to do Midnights, because they did it really well, and they're two comedians, and so they came at it with that sense of levity and humor, and they created running bits, and they approached it as comedians. And so I wanted to bring that same energy where, neither Yael or I have a huge background in comedy. Like, I've done stand-up a little bit. We've taken improv classes together. Like, it's not a stretch for us to try and do comedy, but it's certainly...
But I'm the professor that tries to be funny in class and gets a room full of absolutely dead silent Gen Z kids.
Oh, yeah.
So
Gen Z stares.
Exactly. So, I've got my one joke that I can always turn to was, not even a pity laugh? And that always gets the laugh. So as long as you have one joke you can always pull out, it works.
Stu, you're canceled.
And for us, yeah, it's canceling Stu. We try in every episode to cancel Stu. We never write the joke, but we try to shoehorn in some stupid way of canceling the band into every episode.
I remember after listening to a few episodes of yours, I was picking up on that recurring bit, and I'm like, okay, these two know comedy. They may not be comedians by trade, but that doesn't matter. You got to find a bit to latch onto, and that's yours, and you should be very proud of that.
It'll be funny up until the day where something happens where one of them actually does get canceled. Heaven forbid. And then the joke suddenly becomes very, very not funny.
Okay, how about this? If any of the band members were to get canceled for something terrible and serious, who would it be? Here's a very fun...
It would be Ambi.
Ambi? No, never.
It would be Ambi
Really?
because Ambi transitions, right? And then as soon as Ambi is a girl, everyone hits him with the transmisogyny and finds some reason to cancel him, whether it's valid or not, and then he's gone. Or I should say, and then she's gone.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway, sad.
Oh God! Please never let that come true.
No.
Oh man.
No. Keep that away. Don't speak that into the universe.
Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby.
Now there's a movie I haven't seen in a long time.
What are some of your favorite artists, favorite genres, and just your general kind of music background in your taste in music before getting into this band and sort of being opened up to some other styles?
Yael, you should probably start this one because if I start, everyone's going to tune out before we get to you.
So like many people, I would generally have said that my taste in music is fairly broad. I listen to a lot of pop music. Pop music over the last 10 years has been so much better than it's been in so long, in my opinion. And if you tune out pop music because you, like me, heard too much of it on the radio in the mid 2000s and the 2010s and thought, okay, I have to find all the things I love in indie or in rock or in whatever other genres. No, there's some great stuff happening in pop music right now. Billie Eilish is she's putting out some of the most fascinating music that's out there. My favorite artists, though, span so many different genres. One of my favorite artists, Ezra Furman, grew out of a punk scene and is now doing a sort of punk pop hybrid, but it's very, very trans, socially aware music inspired by her life as a trans woman, as a Jewish woman, dealing with prejudices and trying to figure out like a way forward in life and to help others. Dessa is an artist that I really love. She's a hip hop artist out of Minneapolis that I stumbled across because of another podcast I used to listen to a long time ago when one of her label mates was doing a bunch of the incidental music for that podcasts, like what do they call it? The podcast empires, the
network?
The network. That's the word I'm looking for.
There you go.
So Dessa does some really great feminist hip hop that, I mean, I've loved that since long before I knew I was a girl. There's been some, like, I've had my eras where I was a big prog rock fan. I've had eras where I was really into also bluegrass. Noëlle and I have had some bonding over some bluegrass over the years. Musical theater has always been something that I've loved since I was a kid. Other artists, Regina Spektor is an artist that I was really into for a long time. But I've never gotten into an artist the way that I've gotten into King Giz. I mean, this is just a very new experience for me to go this deep on one artist. I was into like 90s, 2000s, like Native Tongues, Soulquarians, hip hop for a while. Still really love that. So Common, Talib Kweli, The Roots, you know, those kinds of
The Roots,
those
shout
kinds
out
of
from
artists.
Philly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I also like jazz.
You like jazz?
I do like jazz. No,
like
you're
jazz?
right.
I was
You're
waiting for
absolutely right.
I was
they
waiting
do.
for Spenser to do that, and he was quiet. So
You would have thought it was,
Anyway.
yeah.
I used to have that programmed into my soundboard so I could play that clip during podcast recordings. I should bring
nice.
that back.
That's what we need, Joe. We need a soundboard.
Yeah. I don't know what's taking so long. I should look into that. I would have too much fun. It would derail the show so much.
Oh, it's a problem. I stopped using the soundboard because it started throwing off everything I was doing and people started to hate me for it.
Yeah, that would be me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about artists that I've loved. I grew up listening to classic rock because that's what my parents listened to, and I still have a soft spot for all of it. I could go on and on, but I'm going to let Noëlle take a turn.
Yeah. So let's go back about 15 years. Back when I was in, we'll say, my early 20s, I started an experiment where I decided that I would only listen to Christian music. And that was an interesting experiment. So I spent about 5 years only listening to Christian music. At the time, I was a super devout Christian. I was going to Bible college. I was really in all of that. And I learned a few lessons from only listening to Christian music, which is I really had to diversify my tastes quickly because there just isn't enough of it to go super deep on any one thing. And so in order to appreciate a bunch of different genres, or in order to appreciate just listening to Christian music, I had to go into a bunch of different genres. So that really broadened what I listened to, even within just that small, narrow niche. Because Christian music isn't all worship music. It's not what you would think it is. There's Christian metalcore, there's Christian hip hop, there's Christian jazz, there's Christian whatever you want to call. There's a Christian version of it.
Yeah.
And usually it's about 5 years behind what the popular culture is doing,
Okay.
which is disappointing. But I really did end up stretching myself a lot and finding a lot of stuff that I never would have found otherwise because of that. And so then when I eventually started moving out of the faith and started finding more contemporary artists, a lot of that came from Guitar Hero and Rock Band. And so I ended up getting a lot of guitar-driven music pumped into my veins. So that was where I first heard Queens of the Stone Age, for example. Or, you know, where Paramore comes into play, or, you know, just like a lot of pop punk, metal, rock music. And from there, and I guess this is rewinding even a little bit further, I started developing a taste for metal because Guitar Hero really feeds you a lot of metal. And then the Christian scene, the best music coming out of the Christian scene, and I contend that this is still true to this day, is Christian metal.
Yeah.
Largely because the lyrics are kind of unintelligible. And so you get this incredibly technically proficient music where the lyrics are a little bit cringe and Christian-y, but at the same time, it's clearly technically proficient and it's clearly technically as good as anything else that's out there. A great example of that, I would say, is August Burns Red, a band that everyone in the metalcore scene loves. And everyone considers one of the best technical metalcore bands of the generation.
Yeah.
But they're a Christian band, and they have lyrics such as "The walls of the church don't make it holy," where you're listening to it, and they have a point of view about Christianity. They have a point of view as to what they're singing about, but it's all from this Christian lens that doesn't resonate with a bunch of people. And so I took that love of metal and metalcore, and that came with me after I left the Christian scene, and I've kind of stuck with heavy music for the most part as my primary thing that I listen to. And so if you ask me any given week what I'm listening to, I'm probably going to name a deathcore band or a metalcore band or something in that vein. Like I've gotten into a lot of black metal recently. And it's a lot of fun for me. It's energy driven. It's full of ways to like alleviate anxiety. And just, I'm so excited for Rat's Nest and Petrodragonic because I want to see King Giz play in those adjacent spaces where they're,
yes.
I heard that Petro is more like thrash metal, and I'm really interested to see their take on thrash metal. I'm really interested to see how they do the things that I've always loved and make them their own. And so that's where I'm coming from at this point is I love metal. I love bluegrass. I'm just so excited to see the directions that this band goes with the genres that I already love.
Fascinating. Yeah, I really do. I really do think you'll enjoy both Petro and Rat's Nest. Obviously, I won't give anything away, but those two do hit on like very slightly differing kind of subgenres of metal. You'll know kind of right away once you two dive deeply into them. And yeah.
I won't. Noelle will have to tell me.
Yeah. That's fair then.
I had Noelle. I had some of our other metal loving friends each give me a short playlist of metal albums to listen to, and so I've been slowly going through Metal 101 to try to educate myself a little bit before part of it being okay. I want to have some sense of what this kind of music is that I really have historically not listened to before we get to those Giz records. And part of it is just because my friends love this and they talk about it all the time, and I don't like not liking things. Mm-hmm. So even if I don't love them, I want to be able to understand why they do and what they're listening for when they listen to these records. And that's something that with metal, I just really always struggled to do is with a lot of music, okay, this isn't for me, but I get what the people that like it get. So I'm trying to work my way through it, and I think I've been improving on that.
You've had some success with like System of a Down and Let Live, where like you've found ways into them. Where
you said System of a Down, that's one of my favorite bands of all time. I love them so much.
Yeah, so like I'd heard Chop Suey years ago and never cared for it, didn't like it at all. But then I listened to the whole album as part of this Metal 101 project, and it was great. I loved it. Like, why have I not listened to this in full, and why have I not enjoyed any of this in the past? And part of it is that Chop Suey is not the best song off of that record.
By far.
That's great to hear. Like how I love that outlook, that general outlook with music, because like I said, I've kind of always I've had a varied taste in genres of music for pretty much my whole life, but there definitely were specific sort of niches that I found myself getting stuck in for long periods of time, and then I'd be introduced to something totally different and then be drawn to that genre for a long time. And so I always try to be really open, because even though my taste has been pretty varied for most of my life, there always were certain genres or certain styles that I've kind of dismissed, like how you were with metal for a long time. And there's just certain things that I've always been like, oh, listen, I listen to enough different stuff. I don't, whatever, this thing isn't for me. Like you mentioned, you're into a lot of pop music, especially newer stuff and more modern pop, current, a lot of current artists that are out there. And that was like a genre for me that I always thought like, oh, this is just, what's popular, what's on the radio, it all sounds the same, whatever. But then I'm introduced to a certain song by an artist that before I thought I didn't like, and I'm like, wait, this song's different though, I really like this. And then, I sort of go from there, and it's just, I've always tried to be more and more open as I've gotten older to new things that I might have otherwise dismissed previously.
Yeah, and 10 years ago, I would never have said that I like pop music.
Right.
It all ebbs and flows, and the same thing you said is I'll go down a rabbit hole of one thing for a while, and another suddenly appears out of nowhere soon. It's one of the cool things about music is you can let it, take you. Is you can just float on down the river and see where you wind up.
Float along, fill your lungs.
That's right. Thank you. Yeah.
There we
brought
go.
it on
That's
back
right.
to Giz.
Gotta keep it moving.
We came back around.
I was just going to add on to that I think, Joe, that I come from a slightly different direction, a slightly different perspective, I guess, as a music listener. And you kind of know this in a general sense. I was very much a classic rock kid growing up. Like, I was the only kid, for example, who graduated high school in 2010, who was probably in my area listening to only Van Halen, Def Leppard, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC. Kids around me were not listening to that. And I stuck with that for
but you could do
so
a lot
long.
worse.
Yeah, absolutely, you could do a lot worse.
I was right there with you when in 2010, graduating high school the same year. Yeah, I was the one listening to Zeppelin for sure.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay, so
Oh yeah, no, that was my Zeppelin. That was my Pink Floyd era.
Yeah.
I wrote a paper about Pink Floyd, about specifically "Shine On You Crazy Diamond" in my first year of college in English class.
I really, though, I have to credit King Gizzard, though, with just kind of being that catalyst to opening my eyes and ears to other genres of music, because I think you both and Joe as well have talked about just kind of, as the years have gone on, being opened up to other genres and other artists that you previously would have dismissed. I really, truly think that being introduced to King Gizzard, and once again, all credit to you, Joe, holy shit.
Thank you.
You miracle worker. That just like naturally expanded my mind to other genres. Like, I wasn't really out there discovering other genres out there outside of rock on my own. It took a band like Giz that dabbles in so many different realms to kind of make that happen. And I'm so glad it did happen.
So here's a question in the other direction. What genres have you started to listen to non-Giz versions of that music that you wouldn't have gotten into without Giz?
Joe, you want to take this one first?
Oh, gosh, I don't know, because I was a little late getting into them, not quite as recently as the two of you have started with this whole podcast journey, but the first time I heard like Fishing for Fishies, like I said, was the first big album of theirs that really got me hooked. That was like probably like 5 years ago or something, so I haven't been there from super early on. So by the time I heard them, I already had a pretty diverse taste in music, like and like I said, I've kind of gone through different ebbs and flows of like being really into one genre for months at a time or years at a time, and then getting into something else. I will say a style of music I had never heard before them is sort of their trademark sound, people might say, on a lot of records, which is like the noisy, garagey, krautrock kind of thing with like Nonagon Infinity, I'm in Your Mind Fuzz, all that kind of sound, and also the psychedelic kind of stuff. I've never really been into like psych rock. It's not something I had ever listened to. I don't know if there's much. I'm trying to think if there's an artist I got into in one of those genres because of them. But I mean, there have been recently in the last few years a handful of bands that, because I listen to so much Giz on previously Spotify, but ever since they've been off that, YouTube Music, on my streaming platform, that like there's these other bands and songs and artists on playlists that pop up that it suggests as similar to them. And so I've definitely gotten a really unique mix of stuff since then. Some other kind of noisy rock stuff. It's hard to think of a particular artist or songs off the top of my head, but I'll just say those, the sort of garage rock and the psych rock were things that I was not aware of before, and I love how they do it. So that was a new thing for me. What about you, Spencer?
Yeah, for me, I think the two major genres that they open me up further to as far as other artists and bands. Number one, microtonal music.
Oh, that too.
I had like zero familiarity with that ahead of Giz, and so they kind of opened my brain and my ears to the world of microtonal rock, and I would struggle, unfortunately, to name many bands out there. Of course, in the Giz adjacent zeitgeist right now is Angine de Poitrine. I like them, don't love them. We did have this conversation off mic briefly before recording here, but they do some really cool and interesting stuff. And then there have been a smattering of other artists within that genre that the algorithm on the listening platforms has fed me, and it's been kind of like never heard of them, but I like this track. I might go back to them again in the future. And then the other genre that I think they turned me on to further was I hesitate to just water it down and call it yacht rock, but weirdly yacht rock, because how much do I give away here, Joe? There's one album coming up about 5 years into the future that starts with a ch, I'll say, that incorporates some like jazzy
okay, so
rock.
changes.
Yeah, okay, yep, you got it.
No, you weren't supposed to get that. That was such a subtle clue, Spencer.
Okay,
How could they possibly...
All right, edit it out.
Edit point. They opened up my ears to this world of like a side of rock that I really previously dismissed pretty hard. Bands like Steely Dan and Eagles, and you know those 70s kind of literally kick back on your yacht or kick back on a hot summer day with an ice cold brewski, and you know that quintessential
okay, well, if you're gonna threaten me with
life.
A good time,
yeah. So it opened me up to that.
You couldn't make me dislike any music if you've set me up on a nice summer's day with a cold Rainier.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Rainier. Take me back to Washington, baby.
Oh gosh, yeah. By the way, for the listeners, because this was sort of our discussion off mic before starting recording, but Noëlle and Yael are both based in the Seattle area, and Spencer, as we've brought this up a few times, but is originally from Washington State, and so they had some things in common. So there's a little local reference for the three of them, and not me, because I have never been to the West Coast at all. I'm a PA boy for life. But
you can have your Yingling. It's fine.
Oh
Yingling
yes,
is great
thank you.
too.
You get it. Yeah. I love Yingling. Yes, that's our special. That's our PA lager right there. But anywho, just putting in that little insert there for people not from your state, your shared little thing there.
Yeah, and to stay on topic, one of the things that I think I found from Giz that I wasn't expecting was Doomgong.
Oh yeah,
like. I didn't know what psych rock was before Giz, and then the algorithm just surfaced Doomgong at one point, and holy shit, that is entirely up my alley. That is amazing, and I never would have found that otherwise.
I have yet to check him out.
That's an artist name that I've seen circulated a little bit online in some of the Giz spaces on social media, and I've seen some clips, and the clip I saw, actually, we mentioned KEXP earlier. It might have been a KEXP performance.
They just did KEXP.
Okay, so that's what I saw. I saw a clip of that on Instagram, and it sounded super gizzy, like very kind of Mind Fuzz, Murder of the Universe, somewhere in between there, of just that noisy, psyche, garage rock stuff. And I've been meaning to listen to them since seeing that, and I totally forgot. So thank you for reminding me. I'm gonna listen to Doomgong some more.
Yeah, I would absolutely throw on their third record, Megagong.
Okay, Doomgong, Megagong. Let me. I'll save it right now.
It's genuinely astounding.
So going from the sort of your backgrounds and where you started with your music tastes, we already sort of talked a little bit about how Giz has opened you up to some new genres that you might not have listened to before. So I'm curious, what are, so far, with everything you've covered, and again, just to mention for the listeners, you've covered everything in chronological order from Anglesey in the very beginning up to your most recent episode that's out as of right now, being Polygon Dwanaland, and you're going to have Gumboot Soup coming out soon. And so I'm wondering, so far, do you have a favorite album, or do you at least have a favorite genre, favorite flavor that they've delved into?
That's a big question.
I know. I'm sorry. I had to get it out, though.
What's your favorite flavor of Giz?
Yeah.
Yael, do you want to start again?
I'll start. Sure. I think that right now it's hard to say. It might just be recency bias, but it's hard to put something above Polygon Land. I mean, that album has so much going for it. It's so complex and detailed, and I love just one of the weird, wonderful things about this show format that we've forced ourselves into is that we give ourselves so much time and also pressure to really dive in and dig into everything, that a complex, meaty album like Polygon Land has so much in there, and we're going to get into it. And I mean, we could have probably done a 10-hour episode on Polygon Land. We probably could be talking about Polygon Land for 4 episodes and still not cover all of what there is to say about it. And so that really just that's the one to me, I think, right now. It's the last episode we put out, but I would say that's been my favorite. Obviously, your Nonagon, I'll let Noelle say hers. I don't want to step on her toes, but I had other favorites as well, right? There hasn't been a record that I've straight up disliked in a while.
Yeah, and I'll say on my side, this is a hard question because I can't narrow it down to one album. Like, I have a good solid top 3.
Okay, that's fair. That's good enough. I don't expect you to name one.
What are the top 3?
Yeah, so Polygon Land, Flying Microtonal Banana, and Paper Mache Dream Balloon are my top 3.
Great choices.
Okay, because the other day when I asked you the same question, you had Nonagon and not Poly in there.
Yeah, I've kind of changed my mind on that. I think Poly has usurped Nonagon Infinity in my top 3. But I will say, there deserves to be an honorable mention, which is Eyes Like the Sky.
Ooh, okay.
Hey.
And I don't see,
out of nowhere.
I don't see a lot of people hyping up that album. But that, like, right away when I first heard that record, I went, oh, I get this. I get what it's going for. This is really cool to me. And I still hold on to it as one of those that I think is vastly underappreciated because it's doing something that's so unique and so different that it just turns people off before they have a chance to really recognize how artistically done it is.
Absolutely.
That's one that is really a special, unique place in their discography, and it was so early on in their careers. I mean, that was their
so early.
Yeah, that was their second ever full album.
Second LP, yeah.
Yeah, second.
That's such a fun, unique pick, and it's one that I overlooked for a while before doing our episode on it, our album discussion on the show. I had so much fun diving into the story of it and just the uniqueness of it, and it's just one of those unique moments that makes the band so special that they just did something like that. It's just so crazy. So I'm glad you appreciate that album in that same way.
Yeah.
I will take this moment to formally apologize for my negative review of Oddments.
Okay.
I was deeply offended by that after listening to that episode.
I have to listen to that episode of yours. I didn't hear that
Oddments
one
is better than I gave it credit for at the time. Gotta say, it's grown on me.
Yeah, Oddments is another grower for me. That one really grew on me. Yeah. That's one of my favorite, like, early albums of theirs. Like, if you talk about the early, very lo-fi production kind of stuff of their discography, Oddments is really up there for me. I love Oddments.
I don't think there's a whole lot of opinions I've stated on the show that I want to walk back. That, I think mostly the 2 weeks have been enough to set opinions pretty strongly, and I haven't really, really super updated anything. But that one I was wrong about.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I look back at the track listing for it, and I just go, oh, right, there are some real bangers on here. I mean, it's got Stressin', it's got Old, Work This Time, Sleepwalker, Hot Wax, and Cryin'. Like,
yeah,
that's a record.
I will say that I never really ever put on that full album and just let it play start to finish, even though I like plenty of the songs on it.
Yeah.
Lately, though, just for ease of, like, not looking at my phone too much during my workday, I'll put Giz on shuffle, and anytime an Oddments song comes on, I am almost almost without without variation, just like wowed and entertained fully by whatever song comes on off that album. It's young Giz, but Giz at a crossroads. You could tell where they'd been, but also kind of where they're headed on a lot of songs.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, I think that when I got there, I loved Float Along, Fill Your Lungs. Early on, I would say that was the record that made me go, okay, this isn't just a show I'm doing. I'm a fan now. What I now would say, okay, yeah, I'm part of the weirdo swarm. Didn't know that term at the time. Hadn't gotten to Nonagon yet. But
yes.
But, Float Along, Fill Your Lungs, that was the album that made me go, okay, no, I'm pumped. I want to see what else these guys do. I'm really, really excited. And then Oddments just didn't give me that same feeling in the moment. And so I think I was a little bit harsher on it than I ought to have been. But since then, I think there's just been such a continual run of great stuff that they've put out that I don't have anything to take back because I was correctly effusive in my praise about everything. It's good to be right.
It's good to be correct the first time, right? And kind of in a similar vein to what you were just saying, there's still a lot of albums to go, obviously, the you two have yet to cover on your show. One of the questions that I had jotted down here was, what are your expectations or maybe even hopes for where the band will go from where you are in their discography right now?
I can share a fear.
Oh, a fear. Let's hear it.
So I've never really followed a jam band before. I don't know what a jam band looks like. I don't know what to expect from a jam band. And I know that they really lean into that as time goes on. We just watched Lowlands 2018, which was the first show that we've seen where they've really started to lean into being a jam band a little bit, where they're doing stuff that's more like varied and interesting in their live sets. And I loved that. But at the same time, I'm going, okay, am I going to understand it when we get to like a 20-minute jam on Sense from Paper Mache? Like, is that going to click with me, or am I going to go, okay, I get it, we can move on now? And I am concerned that we're going to get to that point. I'm going to go, oh, for some reason, this doesn't click with me. That said, I'm really excited also to look forward to that, where, hey, maybe they're going to do something that's going to break my brain, where I'm going to go, oh, I get this now. Now I can go back and experience The Dead, and now I can go experience Fish. Now I can experience Billy Strings in a new way. And I'm really excited for that. I'm hoping that they open that door for me and that I'll be able to see all this stuff that I haven't been able to see before. And you know what? I want to believe the hyperbole. Sorry, I was just working up to that, and then...
Yeah, it sounds like there was a reaction there on your part. It sounded like you got Yael worked up there with an opinion.
No, just a reference. Just a groan.
But Yael, what about you?
I have always been a very adamant believer, truly felt in my soul, that if you're following an artist, if you're paying attention to what they're doing, you need to trust them and just go where they take you. And if it turns you off for a moment, then okay, it happens, no big deal. But you can never tell an artist what to make. You can never be upset that they didn't make something that was a little bit more that you wanted, because it's an art, and art comes from the artist. And so I guess that kind of leads me to saying, like, am I excited for some albums? Like, yeah, absolutely I am. But I try, and I think that it's gotten to the point where I don't even really have to try too much. Whatever comes, whether it's techno stuff that I have never historically really vibed with, or metal stuff, which I haven't vibed with until lately, or more jazzy shit or bluegrass shit that I have vibed with in the past. Like, I want to hear what they're going to do, because I like them doing what they do. And when they do the things that they want to do, it seems to turn out pretty well for me.
Yeah.
So I want to just like sink into the music and just see what comes.
Yeah, you still have so much ahead of you, even like before they make any new music. There's still so much that you haven't heard yet, and there's a couple genres you just mentioned that you're going to be excited when you get to certain albums, because there's pretty much a whole bunch of everything you just said, except for bluegrass. Not yet, but they might be making a bluegrass album with Billy Strings, maybe. So, I'm excited to see if that happens.
Yeah, so I mean, I've definitely heard some of that. They've got the orchestral record, and I'm excited to listen to that. And they've got, more synthy stuff, and I'm looking forward to that. And they've got jammy stuff, and I'm looking forward to that. I want to know what the stories that they have to tell. I want to know what they want to play for us, because hell yeah, it's been awesome so far.
I think part of what gets me excited for the new stuff is that at this point, I'm not listening for the genres that they're doing. I'm listening for the individual members' fingerprints. So like, I know what a Stu song sounds like.
So far.
I know what an Ambi song sounds like. I know what a Joey song sounds like. And I know how to identify those elements. Mm-hmm. And so I know that as we move forward into the stuff that, stretches me a little bit more, I'm going to always be able to come back and go, okay, this is stretching me, but I still see Stu's fingerprints on this. I still see how Ambi has contributed to this. I still see Joey's weirdness in here. And I think that really pushes me forward, even to the stuff that I'm maybe more trepidatious about, where, yeah, I can still be excited for it because I know I like the individuals so much that anything they throw at me is still going to have the individual in it. And the individual is what gets me excited.
Yeah, they've already gotten me accustomed to the idea that they're going to do a bunch of different shit.
Yeah, so at this point, you recognize what the different band members do and contribute, and their sort of tastes and styles with what they put into their music. So at this point, you're a fan of the way that they do things in general. You're a fan of the individual artists that come together and make this band. And so it's, that makes it even more exciting, because it's not just about like, oh, the next one we're doing is this one genre that I'm not really into. It's just, you're excited to see how this band that you're already a fan of and you already appreciate how they do things, you're excited to see how they, do their take on this next style, I guess.
Yeah, and sometimes it's an excitement that's more informed by the other stuff I've listened to, and sometimes it's an excitement to try something new. Either way, it's exciting. It's good to be a Giz fan.
It certainly is.
And it's good to be a Giz fan with a lot of stuff ahead of you.
And it feels too, I'm sure, that within the band, with those like individual personalities, as you were saying, like you can identify the, where Stu has his fingerprints, or where an Ambi influence pops up. It almost feels like there are just infinite possibilities folded into one another, doesn't it? Because it's like, so many of these guys also have their own like separate side projects, and that's not even taking those into consideration. It's almost like you have multiple bands in one, not just like, all these parts making a sum of greater than, I totally flubbed that, whatever the quote is, but you get what I'm trying to say.
Greater than the sum of their parts? Is that what you're trying to get at? Yeah. That's a good point too, is like, not only like between the music of King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard and then all the other bands that those members are involved in, there is so much fucking music. Like, it's just, it's so much. So who knows, maybe in 2030 or whatever, when you two finally get caught up, if you are by then.
It won't be that long. It won't be that quite
okay,
that
well, whenever
long.
you do get caught up.
I hope, because I want to be able to enjoy the new stuff with y'all before.
Right, yeah, that would be nice. And then, maybe once you do get caught up at some point, then you can delve into some of their side projects, like you mentioned, checking out Bull Ant a little bit, which is Joey's electronic music. So there's so much out there in this universe.
I am so excited for Sojourn.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah, same.
I'm so excited to hear what Cavs has been up to, because that first record from Cavs was so interesting and so dynamic, even while just being him. That now that he's folding in other musical elements, I am so excited to see what a Cavs song looks like.
For sure.
Yeah, because you don't get that a lot with Giz. He's usually not a writer on most of the songs. Obviously, he's the drummer, and the percussion of their music is such a big part of it, and he's incredible at what he does and what he contributes to their music. But when it comes to like lyrical writing or, actual melody writing or anything like that. Most of that kind of starts with Stu and Joey and Ambrose. They're kind of the main three that sort of start things off with that. So I am excited to hear a completely Cavs composed album, working with some other very talented, high-level studio musicians who are amazing at their craft, and to see what they're able to offer along with this music that's come out of his mind. I actually, on our last episode of the show, I did a little solo episode just talking about those singles and giving some updates about the Sojourn coming out. And I love those first two singles. That's a whole other thing to talk about, but it's great.
I'm a big fan of the first two singles. I've heard that the Murlocs have been spotted in the studio, and they haven't announced anything, but I have my eyes peeled for that. And it has been really interesting because we're not holding ourselves to this chronological order for any side projects or anything.
Right.
So, that's one of the few ways I can enjoy the hype cycle and, get really pumped for something that's about to come out.
True.
So that's been really fun watching this Cavs record on its way out, and hopefully some new stuff from all of them soon, from any of them.
Yeah, and that'll help you get content all the way into 2035 and beyond once you finally catch up with the Giz catalog proper.
That's right. We've been talking about since very shortly after the start of our show, what do we do once we're caught up? What do we do after this? And we have not landed on anything, and it probably won't happen that we land on anything until right about when it happens. But we've pitched each other 5 or 6 different ideas about what we could do after. And, I don't want to make any claims or promises because Lord knows I don't even know. But there's a decent chance as well that we might not even stick with Giz. As far as the direction of the show after this, because as we love Giz, and it's hard to do a show like this, I think, with a band that isn't so genre confused, but also just what we've gotten from listening to an artist chronologically with the deep dives and going completely blind into something and then spending 2 weeks in full with a record. That's been, I think, the most fascinating thing for me about what this show has done, and to change how I think about music and how I respond to music.
It's such an attractive idea.
And what it's done to my ability to listen to other music. And, we have our own version of your Most of What We Like segment where we talk about what we've been listening to lately. And one of the things that I've been doing over the last few months is, since the start of the new year, since the start of 2026, is I've kept my own spreadsheet where I list every album that I've listened to in 2026 that I have not heard before. So it doesn't need to be a 2026 album, but as long as I've never listened to it, I'll log it. And trying to keep up, listening to music that I haven't heard before and keeping track of it, I think has really helped me listen to other stuff in addition to Giz, which is hard to do when you have to listen to that much Giz.
Yeah.
But it's really hard for me to talk about any of the stuff I've been listening to on the show or really at all, because I'm not giving any of these albums a fair shake compared to what I'm giving to Giz. So there's nothing on here that I've listened to more than a handful of times. And so I don't know this album. This album could be so much different, from what I've heard so far. This could be so much more interesting or complex than I'm giving it credit for, or maybe something that seemed really cool at first, will get really old really fast.
That's been something that I've noticed a lot in my listening. Like, I'm trying really hard to give albums that fair shake, and I'm trying to go through the Mars Volta's discography now, giving it the deep dive, where I'm really diving in deep and I'm listening to the lyrics and I'm reading the history and I'm taking notes, because I want to get to know this band. This is not a band that I know well, and I loved the Giz project so much that I want to extend that same courtesy to other projects I want to get into. So I'm doing that with the Mars Volta. And that's proving to be really promising and really interesting. And we've talked about, okay, so if we carry this format forward after we're done with Giz, after we've done all of the Giz records, if we carry this format forward, who would be a cool artist to do this with? And there's been one name that has come up over and over for us. And we're not committing to do this. We don't know for sure that we're going to do this, but we've looked at Sparks. Sparks is one of those bands that has, 30 to 50 albums.
30 to 40 feral albums.
Yeah, exactly. I've only heard their first record, and I know that I really like their first record. And I've heard a couple singles throughout their catalog, but most of it is a blank slate for me. And so I think it'd be really cool to dive into a band as expansive as Sparks, who I know paved the way for a ton of other artists to be able to do interesting stuff. Like Queen cites Sparks as an influence, and the Beach Boys cite Sparks as an influence. And they're just one of those artists that it's your favorite artist's favorite artist.
Yeah.
They never really broke into the mainstream on their own, but they've always been in the background pushing the boundaries. And I really want to be able to hear what those boundaries are that they're pushing. And so that's something we floated as, once we're done with Giz, what if we move on to another artist who is also doing something expansive and defining, and that we think would be interesting enough that we could talk about it for an hour every 2 weeks. And Sparks has come to mind. Bruce Springsteen has come to my mind, because I don't know any Bruce.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do know a little bit more Bruce than that. I've thought about like Swans, doing more experimental stuff. We've pitched a handful of artists to each other, and we've pitched a handful of other ideas as well. But as much as we've come to love this band, we've also come to love this format. And I'm not sure that anybody else who's listening to us is getting what we get out of the show. And I hope that we can inspire folks to start to listen to some music in this way. You don't necessarily need to make podcasts about it. Although if you do, hey, I'll listen. I'll listen along with you. But yeah, take it slow and give yourself a chance to really internalize things and go through from start to finish. And it has to be from start to finish, because that's when you get to really notice, okay, not just, oh, that's where that comes from, but, oh, this is how they're using that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, watching the littlest things. I talk about it all the time on our show because it's just something that fascinates me so much, is that the way that they use panning in the studio.
Yeah.
The way that they use like the tape recording in the studio. All of these things really strongly influence their sound and what they have been able to make. And all of it is stuff that they started off doing kind of simply early on, and then by their middle career where we are now are really expanding on and using in more interesting ways.
Yeah, it is really thrilling to follow the growth and the progression. I will say that Joe and I both, avid podcast listeners ourselves to just a wide variety of other programs, we both listen to a couple of music podcasts, and they in varying formats that kind of differ among the different shows, will follow different artists and bands' whole careers in a similar kind of linear structure, like a chronological structure. Start at the beginning, go all the way to the end, or in the case of active bands, just go all the way to the present day, their most recent stuff. And it is really fascinating. It just, the way it shows you the growth and the development, it's like you're taking the journey with the band. And I don't often name drop other pods here on the program, but one podcast I want to credit with kind of getting me familiar with a couple of artists I've never heard before, the show What Is Music? And it's a few friends from the UK who cover a different artist or band in every season. They've done a season on Radiohead. They've done a season on Muse, two bands I love very much. I listen to both of those, and they helped me discover the Welsh rock band Manic Street Preachers. And that's
yes,
that
was actually their very first season that I'm making my way through right now. And also a band that they've never really got much notoriety here in the States. So yeah, always bottom line, just kind of cool to hear broken down bit by bit, an artist's growth and progression like that.
Yeah, just to shout out another one, and I've cited this podcast as being one of my favorite and an inspiration to me, is the podcast Dissect. If either of you have ever heard that one, highly recommend.
Yes, they did the season about My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, right?
Yes, yeah. So the guy Cole that hosts it, he, for anyone who doesn't know, and I have shouted him out a couple times during most of what we like and stuff. I think even recently I mentioned it because he's doing a Daft Punk season right now that I'm super obsessed with.
Holy shit.
Yeah, you got to check that out. But yeah, so basically it's called Dissect, and every season of the podcast, he'll take a few months off and then start a new season where he covers one album by an artist, and every episode is about an hour, maybe a little less, talking about one song, and he goes in chronological order. Sometimes there's an introductory episode where it's like sort of the artist's background and where they were at before this album was written and recorded and such. And his musical analysis, he's got a background in, I think he studied classical music in school and stuff, and so he's got like this deep, rich music theory background and has played multiple instruments. And so hearing someone like that, break apart songs that you just usually very casually listen to and you just love because they just make you feel good or they're catchy or whatever, but hearing them broken down into, here's these lyrics here representing, where this person was in their life, or something that they went through, or like something really serious or whatever, and turning it into this deeper thing about how it connects with other people or social issues or whatever. All of these things is just mind-blowing and fascinating. And so that's just sort of on that subject, that is the biggest inspiration for me when it comes to doing what we do with breaking down Giz's music. Not quite to the same degree, we don't have the same like professional musician theory background and kind of stuff, but we try our best. but it's still it's nice. I feel like I've learned a lot and taken a lot from that.
Yeah, and on the topic of other music podcasts, I think one of them that was really formative for me was Rishikesh Shirway's podcast, Song Exploder.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that one.
And
that's a great show.
Yeah, and I love the format of that show where it's just a guest comes on, a musician comes on to talk about one song, and he edits himself out of the interview. So you're just hearing the artist talking, and you're just hearing the artist's stems and the demos as they talk through, this is what was important to me about this song. And it goes super deep into like what makes the song what it is, why the song is special to them, what challenges they ran into while trying to record it. I think a really good episode that really struck me was their episode with Lucy Dacus, where she talked about recording thumbs. And like throughout that episode, she's just constantly talking about how hard it was to make a song that delicate, and how hard it was to find a way to make something that is soft and small feel big and feel impactful. And that show has really changed my perception of making music and how I make music, because all of a sudden I'm hearing everybody talk about, oh, these are the challenges that I ran across in making music. And I'm able to look at their challenges and go, oh, so I can learn lessons from you without having to do the same stuff. And that blew my mind. And I still point to that as one of the most important podcasts I've ever listened to.
Yeah, that's a great show, Spencer. If you've never listened to, have you listened to Song Exploder?
I have, yeah. I've listened to a couple of episodes. One I can remember specifically. Oh, no, two, actually. How could I forget? Rivers Cuomo, frontman of Weezer, talked about the writing and development of the song Summer Lane and Drunk Dory off of Weezer's White album, which will be celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. Holy shit.
No.
And, yeah. I'm a huge Weezer fan. And also the Hozier song Nina Cried Power.
Yes.
That
Hozier
one's so
goes
good.
in depth on that one. That was a very good episode as well, yeah. And of course, his beautiful Irish accent. Dude, that's a voice I could listen to forever.
Oh, yeah.
Anywho, that's our music podcast chat. Other music podcast chat. And we took a break from talking about our own music podcast here.
Speaking of our own music podcasts, y'all do something that we've been doing as well that has been one of my great highlights of doing our show. And I was so pleased to find that you were doing the same thing, which is recording our own bits and pieces of the King Gizzard music. So at the start of each of our episodes, we have about maybe 8 bars of one of the songs from that album that we put in between Noelle's introduction to the show and our conversation, and y'all have your in between segment musical interludes.
Yeah, because I was gonna say the sort of the theme song that always plays at the beginning was an original production by me, and I was just trying to like get in touch with their kind of garage rocky, like kind of fuzzy rock song sound. So I just sort of like on the spot just made something up, and it's stuck ever since. But aside from that, yes, we use handfuls of songs of theirs as like transition music, like we do the Most of What We Like segment. So I play the beginning of Most of What I Like from Paper Mache, or what's the other one I use all the time, Spencer?
We use
You
one,
Could Be Your Silhouette. Sometimes I use
Silhouette.
as like, because it's kind of got that like just passing the time elevator music kind of vibe in the beginning, so I'll play that as we're just kind of transitioning to a different segment or something, and stuff like that. So yeah, I have a lot of fun with that, and obviously there's so much to play with there for different moods and different, you know, whatever it is I want to convey with a snippet of their music.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of fun recording the stings at the beginning of every episode because it forces us to listen to the record a little bit differently, where we're now listening from the perspective of, okay, what can we copy or bring our own spin on? Mm-hmm. And that's been really challenging because we're all musicians, but we're not necessarily good musicians. I would say that we are, especially as it comes to recording, we're all kind of learning what we're doing. And so when we come into something like Polygondwanaland, which is such a complex record with so many layers, we're listening through it going, I don't know what the hell we could possibly do here. This is all way above our skill level. And then all of a sudden you hear one moment, you go, wait, I think we can do that moment. And for us, it was the end of Crumbling Castle.
Where it gets really slow and sludgy and heavy and it's just killer.
And so
that part is not polymetric. Very importantly, that part is not polymetric.
No, it's just 4/4.
We had our girlfriend come over and she recorded drums for it. And then I put down the guitar, Yael put down the bass, and that was it. And we managed to put together 8 bars of Crumbling Castle, which was just a ton of fun. And it forces us to think outside of our comfort zone. I've had to buy plugins specifically so that we can make stings. Like when we got to Robot Stop, I didn't have a way to do the vocal effect that they do. So I had to go buy a plugin so I could do that vocal effect. And now I have that plugin and I can use that in future projects because I've heard how Giz uses it. And they aren't just
you
using...
can have a lot of fun with that.
They aren't just using Little Altar Boy on Robot Stop. They're also using it on Rattlesnake and for some Han Tayumi stuff where you have this robotic vocal now that you can dial in, and it's really cool to hear how they dial it into stuff that you wouldn't expect them to. And I'm only noticing that because I've had to record sections of their music and figure out how to replicate their sound.
Yeah, and I had to do the work to figure out how to get my MIDI controllers adjusted to play microtones for Flying Microtonal Banana in the book from, of course, Sketches of Brunswick East. And in the future, we'll have to record some microtones for KGLW. And so I'm learning more about my own gear and what I can do with it. It's been really, I've also just improved as a bassist and as a keyboard player over the course of this project. 8 bars at a time is still practice that I wouldn't necessarily be forcing myself to do otherwise. This gives me a deadline. I need to, every 2 Wednesdays, I need to make sure that I'm able to put down something that's good enough to be recorded and put out, because I've never released music before. The only music out there in the world that anybody can go and listen to that has me playing on it are 8 bars at a time of me covering King Gizzard.
Yeah, I love that you two do that, though. That is really fun. At the top of each show, depending on what album you're talking about, doing a little snippet of your own playthrough, your own interpretation of the tracks. We haven't been doing that, and I wish I had that idea sooner when we started our show. It would be a lot more work, but it would be super fun. One little thing, though, that we do similarly is, I don't know if you follow us on our Instagram or on any of our social media pages, and because if you do, I don't know, there could be potential spoilers in there, so maybe you don't do that sort of thing on purpose. But we do tend to, not for every album we discuss, but relatively often just as a teaser, like the weekend before we're about to drop the next episode, we'll post a video of the two of us, me playing usually bass or guitar, depending on the song, and Spenser playing on his keyboard. We'll do like a little section of one song from that album we're going to talk about, where we just play, whatever simple little melody from it. There was even times where Spenser is playing drum sounds, like playing drums on the keyboard while I'm playing bass or guitar or whatever.
Fantastic.
And we just set up a little tripod with my phone and just record a simple little reel for Instagram or whatever. And it's super fun. Some songs have been like, all right, this is pretty easy. Like, let me just look up the tabs real quick and, okay, yeah, no problem. I figured it out. But other ones, it's like, there's some albums where I'm like, I don't know which one of these is going to be right for this or even doable.
Yeah.
Because they have such a full sound too. And we're not like, if we were doing an actual recording and like layers of audio for it, that would be different. But because we're trying to do this on video of just like all in one take, us just playing through a little thing together, like it's hard because we cannot get even close to the fullness of their sound with just two people playing two instruments.
Yeah, and with six or seven guys, like there's just no way that anything that they're doing can be properly covered with just a couple of us in a living room. It's just
well, even with what we've done, Joe, like I remember for Polygon Dwanland, in fact, when we did our little bit of Crumbling Castle, which we did the beginning of Crumbling Castle, whereas I know you, Noëlle and Yael, did the finish there, the end of that song. But Joe, I remember as you and I were talking through that, what should we do off this album? It's like, Crumbling Castle. Like, it sounds a little more simple, little easier to get a hang of. And boy, golly, were we wrong. I can't remember how many times we screwed that shit up before we finally got it right. I'm mainly pointing the finger back at myself.
Yeah, that was the biggest problem with that. Like, I've been playing guitar and bass for many years now. Bass is kind of my main instrument I've latched onto for years. And so for me to look up the tabs and just kind of play that part, like the very beginning where it's just the drums and like the doon doon doon, like whatever, the bass and whatever, that was pretty simple for me. The hard part was Spenser's a little newer to playing instruments, to playing the keyboard and stuff. You had bought it for yourself for, what is it? Was it Christmas of 24 when you got that?
Christmas
you
of 24,
it? Yeah, and so it's been sort of a learning experience for you over the last like year plus of learning and getting comfortable behind the instrument. But the hardest part wasn't just like you learned the main melody pretty easily, but the hardest part was staying in sync and like not losing the rhythm completely between the two of us. Like, we did so many takes to get it, and even the one that we have and posted was still a little fucked up, and we just like posted it anyway, and we're like, here's our best take on it. We're talking about Polygon Dwanland this week. Like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, and Noelle's been playing guitar and bass for her entire life, and our girlfriend Emma, who's the third part of Beautiful Trainwreck, has been playing drums and bass for her entire life, or long enough for both of them that they're very good at their instruments. I am very new. I'm very new to the bass in particular, and I'm very new to recording instruments, right? My background with music myself was I'm a singer and I played clarinet in high school band. So like,
hey, there's Giz songs with clarinet.
There is, and I brought out my clarinet for Sense. That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
That was tricky, bringing back the clarinet after so many years and trying to get. There's a very high note there in Sense. It really, really angers me how good Stu is at picking up new instruments.
Yeah,
right.
Really.
Just save some talent for the rest of us.
Unbelievable.
But the new thing that we're doing is, we know that we have KGLW coming up. And we know how hard it is to record a sting for something when we're just like programming our synth to do microphones, especially when there's such a guitar-driven band. And so we bought a build-your-own guitar kit, and we are converting the neck of it to a microtonal neck.
Oh, that's so sick.
Amazing.
So we are literally making our own microtonal guitar so that when we get to KGLW, we have something to record with.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really fun, interesting project that we never would have undertaken in any other way. And it's just another way that this goddamn podcast keeps sucking money out of our wallets.
Yeah, right? You wouldn't think so, you know? You're like, oh, I already have a microphone and a computer and like the basics. Like, I don't need to buy anything to start a podcast. But now here you are. So
yeah, but now with the amount of money that we've sunk into vinyl, the amount of money we've sunk into this recording process, the amount of money we've sunk into Field of Vision tickets for this year, which I have no idea how that's... We're going to be the only people at Field of Vision that have never heard Petrodragonic Apocalypse.
Oh my God.
We are going to be the only people at Field of Vision that have never heard The Dripping Tap. Half of the stuff that everybody's going to be super pumped for, we're going to be so clueless.
yeah, you're going to have to guess. You're just going to have to guess what song is that or what album is that from. I can't wait to get to that one. But I'm really glad you brought that up, because actually one of my last couple questions that I have written down that I wanted to get to during our discussion here was... Obviously, you haven't seen them live yet, right? Because you've only been doing this show since October, and you're only about halfway-ish or something through their discography at this point. So there's a lot of music you haven't heard. So my assumption was that, okay, you haven't seen them live yet, and I was going to ask if you were planning to see them live anytime this year. They're only doing a handful of shows this year. They're doing the couple nights at Forest Hills in New York, and then of course Field of Vision again. So that was going to be one of my questions, is will you see them live at any of the couple shows they are doing here in the States, or are you purposefully avoiding doing that to not get spoiled on anything? But it sounds like you're going to FOV. So how did you come to the decision on doing that? And just, you know, what are you most excited for that experience?
We debated this pretty strongly because the whole premise of our show is that we haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
And it does feel like breaking that promise a little bit to go see them live and to hear the stuff that we aren't allowed to hear. But at the same time, we have become such huge fans over the past, 6-8 months. And it feels like if we didn't take the opportunity to see them now, we would regret it, because heaven forbid something happens and they can't make it back to the US, or one of them gets ill and they have to cancel dates and we never get to see them alive again for the next 5 years. Or, heaven forbid anything happens that gets in the way of being able to see them live. We would really regret not going to see them at FOV when we have the chance.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, I think both of us have artists that we've wanted to see live and put it off, and then something happened and we can't. I went to college in St. Louis where Chuck Berry, until he died, was performing once a month, less than a mile away from my dorm on campus. And
Wow.
I just, he was always going to be there, and then he wasn't. And honestly, those shows apparently were not very good by the end. He just, as he got old, he just wasn't quite as capable as he was when he was in his youth. But having, once a month, I had a chance to go see this legend of rock and roll.
Yeah.
And I just never did. I'm not going to make that mistake again. And, we also have a really great opportunity for the show as well. We can take a portable podcast recorder and, grab folks that we meet at the show and after each night and, chat with them about their experience and our experience and what it's all like. And
we can interview bootleggers. Like, we know that Obicogs has already said that they'd be willing to jump on the show.
Oh,
and so
yeah.
we can kind of get another look at the bands that we don't get normally and talk to bootleggers and talk to the people who are making art around the show and kind of share in that space, which is fun and unique.
yeah, it's such a cool community, and that's why we want to go to FOV, and it's also why we want to catch up and why we're not doing all of the official bootlegs that we thought we were going to do originally on the show, so that we can really join the community and not just be these weird hangers on that are 6 years in the past,
Right.
For all eternity. And you know what? We'll hear whatever they play at Field of Vision, and we won't recognize it. We might hear, oh, okay, that's Mars for the Rich. That's why. Well, we'll have heard Infest the Rat's Nest by then. oh, that's Gila Monster, and that's why everybody's so pumped. But that doesn't mean that we go get to then listen to Gila Monster. We still have to wait for our Petro episode to actually talk about it.
Anytime they start a song that you don't recognize within the first 10 seconds, just plug your ears and go la 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 for the entire duration.
I was just going to say the same thing.
And just but do not no spoilers.
But if I do that, I'll miss Danger Money because I'm never going to recognize Danger Money when it comes on.
Don't worry.
See it.
Noelle, they're not going to play Danger Money. Okay, don't worry about it.
There's no way they're playing that. Watch, Joe, watch. They're going to bust that out at Field of Vision or in New York, and we're going to be like, what the fuck?
If they do, I owe you an apology.
I'll hold you to that.
All right.
You started doing the show and you were already kind of established Giz fans. Have you found anything through doing the show that you were surprised by where you're just like, oh shit, I never would have learned this thing about the band otherwise? What's been your big revelation that the show has brought to you?
I think for me, it's been just the depth and breadth of the band's knowledge of all these various social and political issues plaguing their native Australia, plaguing the world at large. And I'm struggling to grasp one in particular right now. But I think there's just so much of a stereotype out there of, rock. People in rock bands are just these dunder-headed fools who know me shred guitar, me thrash drums, me scream loud, whatever. But Giz are one of those bands that just have such a knowledge and awareness and sensitivity to things going on in the world that are affecting people near and far. And I just think it's refreshing, and it's one thing that's caused me to fall in love with them deeper. And full disclosure, I've never been much of a analyze the lyrics right away kind of guy.
Sure,
I'm a music first kind of guy, as Joe can attest to. We've had this back and forth a few times on the show. But yeah, I think it's surprised me, but in a pleasant way, how lyrically dense and rife with meaning so many of their songs are, just beyond your expected textures and feels of traditional rock songs.
Yeah, I felt the exact same way. I had no idea before going in just how socially conscious this band was, and I've come to really appreciate their fighting for causes that they and I both really believe in, including the cause that, of course, is selfishly closest to my heart of trans rights, that they have been very, very vocal for trans rights, especially here in the U.S. over the last, God, I hate to say it, but decade that trans rights have been under attack in this country from... But I heard a live show that they did in 2016 in Asheville where they were talking about the state of North Carolina's then bathroom bill and everything that's happened since. They've been right on the front lines and cheering for the fall of Tennessee's anti-drag law and everything in between. In addition to obviously their environmentalism comes through in everything they do.
Yeah,
that's kind of the big one.
Yeah, that's the big one, and we kind of joke about it because it just comes up on so many songs, on so many albums that we'll sort of talk about the music and then be like, all right, so going to the lyrics, guess what they're talking about this time? The world is ending because of humans. We're destroying the earth again. Wow. But we kind of joke, but it is nice. It's really nice when an artist or artists that you love are also by all accounts seem to just be good people that care about important causes and champion those things and are very outspoken both in their art and on stage and on social media and whatever. So that's really nice. Spenser, that was a great answer to the question. I almost forgot that we were answering a question here.
Yeah.
I was gonna give a much less serious and nice meaningful answer. I was gonna say that I would have never known that Eric is playing a theremin on their early work and wasn't a drummer at first.
Yeah.
And it's so silly. There's a lot of things like that. There's a lot of moments in their music where I hear a certain sound and I never knew it was a particular instrument or something. Like the theremin, for example, could have just been like guitar feedback for all I knew. I mean, it's so lo-fi and noisy and whatever.
Yeah.
But then, we did our Willoughby's Beach and 12 Bar Brews episodes not too long ago, going back to their, these early releases, and I'm like, oh, at the end of the song, you hear this crazy, like, squealing vibrato sound, and that's Eric going apeshit on a theremin. Like, who would have known? So I loved Spenser's answer, but immediately what I was drawn to was stuff like that, like just the different unique instruments they're playing with and things that I just never would have even paid attention to if I wasn't paying such close attention to the music in order to do the show that we do.
Also a great answer.
Thank you.
Well, as we wind things down here on the show, we've had such a fun time chatting with Noëlle and Yael. We want to do a little something we do as a recurring segment here on the show. Of course, you longtime listeners know what it is already. It's time for Most of What We Like.
Most of what we like.
Okay, this is Most of What We Like, a little segment that we, not all the time, but a lot of the time do at the end of our shows, where we touch on other non-Giz things that we've been into lately, whether it's other bands and music, or shows, movies, books, podcasts, any sort of media, any sort of stuff we're digging at the moment. For me, I am going to stick with music, and I'm going to give some love to my other very favorite band, Everything Everything. I have mentioned them before on the podcast in this segment. I know I have. I think I did when their last album came out. But anyway, Everything Everything is they're from Manchester in the UK. They're a lot of times referred to as like art pop or art rock, like art pop alt rock, something like that. I don't really know how to describe them. They're one of those artists that I can't really categorize them. They're very unique, but I've been a big fan of them for about 10 years now. They, since last year, have been on their Get to Heaven 10th anniversary tour, which was my personal favorite album of theirs, celebrating its 10th anniversary, and it is kind of their biggest to date still, the sort of the fan favorite. And I have not gotten to see them live on that tour because they only did it in the UK and Europe and now are currently in Australia. So they've gone all the way to Australia, but as of right now, no mention of North America at all of this particular tour, and I would die to hear this album in full live. I have gotten to see them once, luckily, a couple years ago in Philly, which was fantastic, and I got to meet them and everything, and it was amazing. But yeah, they're on my mind a lot right now. They're one of my favorite bands, as I said, pretty much my other favorite band next to King Giz, and they've just been on my mind because there's a slight connection there. They're currently in Australia, so I'm kind of connecting the dots a little bit. But seeing footage of them playing online and pictures from, other fans at their shows has brought them back into my life strongly after not listening to them for a little bit. So I just want to give them some love. Listen to the band Everything Everything. If they sound like they might be your thing, I apologies for having trouble describing their sound, but you just got to check them out. My favorite album of theirs is Get to Heaven, and it's unique, it's different, it might not be for everybody, but they're my favorite, and so I'm trying to constantly spread the good word about them. So give them some love. That's all for me. Spencer, do you got something for this week?
Yeah, I actually alluded to it already on the show, but Manic Street Preachers, the aforementioned Welsh rock band who kind of rose to prominence in the 1990s and are actually still active today. They, in fact, just put a new album out last year. I've been listening to their stuff a lot lately, mostly, once again, thanks to the show What Is Music. They're kind of taking listeners through their discography, start to finish, and weirdly, a couple of their more highly acclaimed albums from their middle eras, like The Holy Bible and This Is My Truth, Tell Me Yours. Those are some good albums of theirs, but for whatever reason, their debut album, Generation Terrorists, which in the year 1992 retains a hair metal sound? Question mark? When hair metal had really gone out of vogue for about a good 2 years then. Weirdly, this album is sticking with me quite a bit. There are a couple of songs off of that front half of that album that I really enjoy. Slash and Burn, the opening track being one of them. Motorcycle Emptiness, track 4, which is one of their biggest hits of all time. And another song that comes off that album mentions not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 National Banks of the UK, NatWest Barclays Midlands Lloyds, is just a fun, upbeat album track that I enjoy. So check it out, Manic Street Preachers, Generation Terrorists, and their whole collection of other albums. That's what I got today. Let's kick it off to our guests now, Noëlle and Yael.
Sure, I'll start. Most of what I like lately, I've been trying to listen to some of the artists that are on the Field of Vision bill. Like we said, we're going to Field of Vision in August this year, and I want to know what I'm listening to. So I've been checking out a bunch of those bands, and in particular, the band Discography, Destrends. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing it right, which is why I'm spelling it, because truly no idea. But they just put out their first LP like last month. It's called Off with the Fairies, and it's killer. Oh, it rocks. It's punk or post-punk mixed with some like Bauhaus vibes, goth shit.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I've been recommending this to as many people as I can talk about it to. I cannot wait to see them in Colorado, and just you gotta listen to Off with the Fairies by Discography. You gotta.
Okay, that's one of the Field of Vision artists. I mean, there's a lot of them. I haven't heard it all yet. I know a couple of them a little bit, but that's one that I haven't checked out yet. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, this is their first. This is their first LP. They've released one EP before this called Wasteland, which is also very good. That came out back in 2020. They're also Australian, and they've been heralded lately as like up and coming Australian bands to watch out for, but they certainly have not had their big break yet. They do not have listeners, I don't think.
Yeah, I checked Last FM and I think they had like 300 listeners.
I wasn't sure if that was Discography or if you did that for Hannah Francis. I think you did that for Hannah Francis.
Oh, that could be.
But it might have been that. It might have been Discography. Anyway, they're awesome. Check them out. That's all I have to say.
Hell yeah.
And then I'll come in guns a-blazing. I'm going to go in a completely different direction, and I'm going to talk about the NBC sitcom The Fall and Rise of Reggie Dinkins.
Okay.
If you haven't heard of this one, you are not alone. This one has not really gotten the promotion that I think it deserves. It is a sitcom by Robert Carlock, who is best known for having worked on 30 Rock and The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. He showran 30 Rock and created Kimmy Schmidt, and he created The Rise and Fall of Reggie Dinkins, which is a sitcom about a documentary director played by Daniel Radcliffe, who is trying to make a documentary about Reggie Dinkins, this ex-football player played by Tracy Morgan, who got banned from playing football after he gambled on himself, who is now trying to like rehabilitate his image and make a comeback and earn his place in the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
And so it's this sitcom about this washed up, out of touch football player who thinks that he has a chance of still redeeming his legacy, and this really awkward documentarian who is convinced that he can make something good out of this absolute disaster. And it's funny. The jokes per minute is so high. It's a brilliant show. It's featured guest stars such as Megan Thee Stallion and Craig Robinson. And it's just, it's good. It's funny. And I highly recommend you check it out because I don't think enough eyes are on this one yet. And I really want to see it get a future season.
Awesome. I've been looking for a new show lately.
Yeah, that's, I'm going to need a new show lately because the current one I've been into, I only have like one more season to go. So yeah, I've seen some ads for that show and it looked funny and I just never took the time to start checking it out. So thank you for that recommendation. I always need more shows, and I especially appreciate like, you know, shows that are like quick, you know, I could sit down and watch like 1 or 2 episodes and it's not like a huge commitment and it's just something light. Like sometimes I'm not in the mood for something like heavy drama or anything, you know, sometimes I am, but sometimes I'm not. And so it's nice to have more shows like that in my back catalog to just chill to.
Yeah. Not everything can be The Bear.
Right.
No.
Oh God, dude, I couldn't finish that show. I didn't finish that show. I couldn't take the anxiety anymore. I just couldn't.
That's absolutely fair. I
Oh
was
my
about
God.
to say on the, I was about to say on the fall and rise of Reggie Dinkins. I was going to say, is that a song that didn't make it on a 12-bar bruise? Just sounds like that type.
No, that's the infinite rise of Reggie Dinkins.
The infinite. Oh, giggity.
Oh my God. Okay.
Reggie Dinkins'
Anyway,
last shot.
yeah. We could go on and on. Okay. Well, this has been so much fun, you two. This has been great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Noelle and Yael, for joining
Of
us on
course.
Podagon Infinity. It's been so nice to do a special guest episode once again. We hope to do more stuff like this in the future. And who knows, maybe some stuff will come up that we could collaborate on and chat about again in the future. I'm looking forward to seeing the two of you work your way through the rest of the band's discography. Yeah, it's just a really unique perspective that you have on the whole thing, and it's been so nice sort of picking your brains on your thoughts and feelings about this whole thing. And this has just been a great discussion. And by the way, I know you're doing Fishy soon, me and Spenser. That album's really special to both of us. So, you know, if you happen to need some help with it or a special guest call-in or anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to the two of us. I think either of us would be happy to contribute anything. But no, seriously, this has been great. So thank you, and I hope everyone has enjoyed listening to this discussion. Please check out Midnights with the Lizard Wizard. It's such a fun thing to follow along with. If you're a big fan of Giz, which if you aren't, why are you even here right now? You should like them. You should like their show. So yeah, please do check them out.
Thank you so much, Joe and Spenser. This has been such a blast.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you both for coming on.
We'll absolutely be in touch about fishing for fishies.
Okay, sounds
yeah.
great. And if do you have anything else you want to plug or touch on before we say goodbye for today, or is that about it?
I'm on Bluesky. I'm at noellemidnight.com on Bluesky. That's all I've got to plug.
Yeah, I'm at yael.gay, but unless you're following me for Giz-related content, then there's not really much of a reason to follow me. So follow Noelle instead.
Okay. All right, and if you don't already, you can follow our pages. We are on Facebook, Instagram, X, and Bluesky at Podagon Infinity. And if for any reason you want to reach out and hit us up with a DM or an email as well, podagoninfinity@gmail.com, you could reach out to us there if you prefer. For anything Giz-related, any feedback on our episodes or suggestions for future episodes, please feel free to hit us up there.
As always, thank you for listening to Podagon Infinity, and thank you for keeping it weird and doing your part to spread the good word of the Giz. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you in the next episode. Later, Gators.
Woo! Coming after 12-bar bruise, right? So that's just... Oh, there's a cat scratching at my chair right now, making noise. That's fun.